Hello, everybody. Welcome to all grade 11 learners and grade 11 educators. My name is Linda Hackner. I'm the Director of Education at the Cape Town Holocaust and Genocide Centre. And together with my colleagues at the centre, we welcome you to this unit where we start studying the case study of Nazi Germany as part of the section in your curriculum where we do theories of race in the 19th and 20th century and the effects that these have on governments. So today we're going to look at the case study of Nazi Germany. Before we begin grade 11, in order for us to really get an understanding of what's going on in Nazi Germany, we have to do just a little quick recap of grade 9 history content. I'm sure a lot of you will remember this, but for those of you who don't, I hope this is helpful. So we remember Germany lost World War I. World War I, 1914 to 1918. After World War I, Germany has to sign this treaty, and the terms of the treaty are really onerous. That means really heavy, really hard. So they have to reduce their army drastically, drastic reduction. They lose land, part of which is the Rhineland, which is occupied by the French. And most of the French occupiers, and I want you to remember this, are soldiers from Africa, from countries that the French have colonized. So, for instance, from Senegal, for instance. So in the Rhineland, there are French soldiers who are African soldiers. Austria is no longer part of Germany. Germany has to take full responsibility for the war, and Germany has to pay reparations, has to pay back money to the other countries. So really, by the end of World War I, Germany is pretty much on its knees. And so you must understand that in Germany, the economy at this stage is not very good. Now, what government is in Germany at this time? Well, if you remember, Germany had always had a constitutional monarchy. There was the Kaiser, the king. But between 1919 and 1933, Germany becomes a democracy. And it has a constitution, grade 11s, that if you look at, if you have to read that constitution, and I said to you, whose constitution is this? You would say it's South Africa's constitution. It offers freedoms for people, human rights. People can live wherever they like. Women have the vote, which in those days was unheard of. Everybody is equal under the law. You have a right to privacy. All of these things, very advanced constitution, very advanced. The economy in Germany is slowly coming back to life. Gustav Stresemann goes to the United States. He gets loans. So the economy is building. And of course, when your economy improves, people have jobs, people have money to feed their children, and things improve in a country. But then something happens. What happens is in 1929, the stock market in America crashes, and this leads to a depression throughout the world, an economic depression. I'm sure people were depressed as well, but this was an economic depression, and Germany suffers under that depression. Now, if you look at the dates, grade 11, you'll see 1929, between 1929 and 1919, it's only 10 years, 11 years since World War I, and people have just come out of this terrible economic hardship. They're just seeing the light when, boom, things go bad again. So what happens? Well, Adolf Hitler had become the leader of the Nationalist Socialist Workers' Party. He didn't start it, but he became the leader of it. We will not refer to it as the National Socialist Workers' Party. We'll call it now the Nazi Party. That's the acronym in German. And he, in 1923, had tried to overthrow the government. It was an event that was called the Munich Putsch, the Munich coup d'etat. He tried to overthrow the government, but it failed. Why did it fail? Because the economy was doing okay and people weren't interested in this person. So he decided at that point, in 1923, he's going to use democracy to create a dictatorship. And because of the crash, he takes the opportunity where people are looking for someone to help them. They're looking for someone to say, I'll tell you what's wrong with the country and I'll tell you how to fix it. So his vote from 1928 to 1930 jumps from 2.5% to 18%. He never ever gets a majority, but through different machinations, he takes the opportunity, he gets voted into power, and the democracy, he tears up that constitution, throws it away, and creates a totalitarian regime, total control by one person, the dictator. And he holds control of the whole country, everyone in it, and all its structures. So if you are not one of the members of society that he approves of, you're in deep trouble at this point. So we have between 33 and 45 a racial state. Now what's interesting, grade 11s. All right, well, first let me talk about this. I've already spoken about this in our very, very first unit. We spoke about the fact that race is not scientific, it's not biological. If I have to peel off my skin and look exactly the same as somebody standing next to me who might have a different skin color, who's peeled off their skin, I might have a bit more fat, but that's all. It's not biological, but it's real. Racism is real. Race is not real, racism is. Why? Because we as humans make it real. We give it meaning. And we give it meaning by the way we behave in society, by the way governments use it for policy, and by laws and practices. So please believe that the Nazis were a racial state. And what you might find interesting, grade 11, is this quote from a book called The Racial State. While racial ideologies existed in other places, and they did, we know this because there was social Darwinism, there was eugenics, they did, people were, in America there was racism, in South Africa there was racism. This, remember, is pre-apartheid going into law. So the racial ideologies existed in other places, but in Germany, they enjoyed the widest currency, that means everybody approved, and the greatest political prominence, and the Third Reich became the first state in world history whose dogma, that means ideology, worldview, belief, and practice was racism. Okay, we all know what happens in South Africa in 1948, but this is before that. So they were the first state that made racism its foundation. So, sorry, remember we spoke about eugenics, the belief in improving the human population. Eugenicists felt that they could change the world, change society. Well, the Nazis didn't use the term eugenics. They had another word for eugenics, a German word, which when translated is a little bit nerve-wracking. They called it Rassenhygiene, race hygiene. Now, what's hygiene, guys? We all know about hygiene. We've been washing our hands and wearing masks. And hygiene is making sure that you are clean, that no germs get in, that no viruses or parasites or infections get in. So the Nazis believed in race hygiene. They didn't care about improving the whole of the human population. They were only interested in the German population, and only those Germans who they said had pure German blood. Now, please remember, there is no such thing as German blood, no such thing as South African blood, I've gone through this before with you. There's only blood. But the Nazis believed absolutely in this idea of pure German blood. They called it Aryan blood. Okay, so now they don't want people who don't have pure German blood. Doesn't matter that you might have been born in Germany and grown up in Germany. If you are not considered pure, then they don't want you because you're going to infect them. You're going to infect them. So let's have a look at their ideology. The Nazi worldview, there are masters, the Nazis, the Aryans, and there's no such thing. They just give that name. And those who are inferior. And who are those? Well, these are people who are inferior by blood. Grade 11, you can't change your blood. Your blood is your blood, okay? So the first lot of people that they target are Jewish people. Judaism is a religion, but the Nazis said that Jews were a race. It wasn't the first time this has been said, but they said that Jews have Jewish blood. Grade 11, there's no such thing as Jewish blood. There's no such thing as Muslim blood. There's no such thing as Christian blood. There's no such thing as Hindu blood. Blood is blood, right? Judaism is a religion. But the Nazis said, no, they're a race, and that they have bacteria in their blood, which is going to infect the pure German blood. Then the Roma. Grade 11, Roma and Sinti, or gypsies, which is the derogatory term, but gypsies. And I'm going to refer from now on to the Roma and Sinti as Roma, the blanket term. The Nazis said that the Roma had criminal blood. So if you are a Roma mommy and a Roma daddy and you've had your baby and you look at your baby and you say, our child is going to be a great scientist one day, the Nazis would say, no, your child's going to be a thief because he's got criminal blood, right? Understanding the ideology? People of color. Well, people of color had impure blood, right? What are people of color doing in Germany? Well, remember I told you that the Rhineland was occupied by the French, and many of the occupiers came from African countries, and they met German women and married and had babies and lived a perfectly happy life until 1933. And of course, the disabled. The Nazis said that people with disability had diseased blood and therefore needed not to be part of this pure race. So I spoke to you about positive eugenics and negative eugenics. Let's see how the Nazis used the notion of positive race hygiene. Okay, because remember they didn't use the term eugenics, but called it Rassenhygiene. Firstly, they put out posters of the ideal German family, the family, Aryan family, I'm going to call it, because there were many people living in Germany who'd been there since the 7th century, but because they were Jewish or because they were Sinti or whatever reason, their blood was no good, so they weren't considered Germans. So you had the ideal so-called Aryan family. You've got a strong man. Look at their men were always depicted as massive and strong, always blonde hair, always blue eyes, always with the eagle of war in the background because they're warriors. They're going to conquer land. They're going to conquer the world. And they're women, always blonde, always fair, pale skin, always surrounded by lots of blonde children. The little boy you can see is wearing the uniform of the Hitler Youth. Now, I spoke to you about how eugenicists believed in public health. Well, the Nazis did too. This is a poster telling pregnant women that alcohol and nicotine are very bad for you when you're pregnant. Now, guys, this is way back in the 30s. Okay, in those days, people smoked and drank and had babies. I mean, in the 1950s, I'm telling you now how old I am, when my late mum, God rest her soul, was pregnant with me, well, she drank and she smoked. Okay, that's what people did. But way back in the 30s, the Nazis are saying to pregnant women, don't drink, don't smoke, eat fresh food, eat fresh vegetables. So this is all good advice, except it's only for a certain section of the population. If you're a Jewish pregnant woman, if you're a Black pregnant woman, if you're a Roma pregnant woman, you can eat what you like, and in fact, don't have babies, we don't want them. Okay, so this is sort of positive eugenics, the battle for births. Look at the language they're using. It's a war to have lots of babies. And if you do, then you get medals, because you're fighting a war for the German nation, for the Reich. So if you have 4 or 5 babies, you would get a bronze medal. 6 or 7 babies, you would get a silver medal. And if you have 8 or more, well, then you're up for a gold medal. And if you have 10 children, your 10th child becomes the godchild of Adolf Hitler. Now let's talk about the negative eugenics. This is what Joseph Goebbels, who was the Minister of Propaganda and Enlightenment in 1938. Now they had a Minister of Propaganda. What's propaganda? It's getting people to believe what you want them to believe. Essentially, it's brainwashing. So they had a minister of brainwashing. So he says, our starting point is not the individual. They don't care about you and you and you and you. They only care about the nation as a whole. We do not subscribe to the view that one should feed the hungry, give drink to the thirsty, or clothe the naked. Our objectives are entirely different. We must have a healthy people in order to prevail in the world, in order to conquer the world. So grade 11, if you cannot take care of yourself for whatever reason, nobody's going to take care of you in this kind of environment. It's an environment that has no compassion. You look after yourself and you become part of the nation, or get out, we don't want you. So remember, I spoke to you about forced sterilization, and I spoke to you about the fact that sterilization laws were worldwide. Let's have a look at this. The very first law that the Nazis pass is the sterilization law. But let's look at some figures. In America, from the 1920s to the 1970s, so we're talking a period of 50 years, 60,000 Americans were involuntarily or forcibly sterilized. Between 1933 and 1939, so a period of 6 years, as many as 400,000 German citizens were forcibly sterilized under laws and regulations that were promulgated, that were set by the Nazi government. In 6 years, 400,000 citizens are forced to be sterilized. So you can see what's going on in Nazi Germany at that time. Who is sterilized? Well, here's a young girl whose father is a soldier, or had been a soldier, came from French-occupied lands, was in the Rhinelands, and the Nazis called these people Rhineland bastards. Now, she would have had a very happy life, supposedly. She's at school with her classmates, up until when the Nazis come to power, at which point she is taken and sterilized. These young boys, you can see they have a disability. The Nazis said they were not worth keeping, sterilized. Grade 11. In Unit 6, that's the next unit, we're going to look at how Nazi Germany moves from forced sterilizations to euthanasia. Euthanasia is a term meaning mercy killing. Okay, we'll talk more about that in the next unit. And from then on to genocide. Grade 11s, thank you very much for watching. I'll see you again in Unit 6. Bye-bye.